I never imagined I'd become the villain of my own story. A year ago, I was a 35-year-old husband with a comfortable life in Seattle. My wife, Mara, and I had a seemingly stable marriage of 7 years. We lived in a quiet neighborhood with our goofy rescue dog, Hank. Looking back now, I wonder if there were cracks I refused to see. The day my life fell apart felt deceptively ordinary. It was a drizzly Wednesday evening, Seattle being Seattle. I remember the squeak of my rain-soaked sneakers on our hardwood floor as I arrived home. Mara was dressed surprisingly nice for a midweek outing. A sleek black dress, hair done, even lipstick. "Going somewhere?" I asked, shrugging off my damp jacket. She turned from the hallway mirror with a practiced smile. "I told you yesterday, remember? It's book club night." Her tone was breezy. I didn't even recall her mentioning a book club, but I was tired and didn't question it. "Oh, right." I loosened my tie. "What are you reading this month?" She paused. "Oh, it's some new mystery novel. I forget the name." She gave a little shrug and a wink. "Honestly, I'm just in it for the wine and gossip." I chuckled and any fleeting suspicion slipped away. "Well, have fun. Don't trash talk me too much." She rolled her eyes playfully and grabbed her purse. "No promises. There's leftover curry in the fridge if you get hungry. See you later tonight." I watched her silhouette pause to open her umbrella through the frosted glass. Then she was gone into the drizzle. I had no reason to doubt her. Not yet. Settling in for a quiet evening, I flipped on the TV and sank into the couch. Hank trotted over and laid his head on my lap. I absent-mindedly scratched his ears while a forgettable show played. My mind was wandering when I heard the faint chime of an iMessage. It wasn't my phone. It was the distinct ding of Mara's iPad, left on the end table. Probably one of her friends texting about book club. Another message dinged a few seconds later. Curious, I picked up the iPad. The screen was unlocked, showing a text thread from a contact named Colin Work. My stomach knotted as I read the newest message. "I can't stop thinking about earlier. Same time tomorrow?" I blinked, unsure I was seeing correctly. Earlier? Same time tomorrow? This wasn't one of her girlfriends. Heart thudding, I scrolled up and found dozens of messages, each like a fresh dagger. Some were flirtatious, others explicitly intimate. "I can still smell you on me," one read. Another detailed a secret lunch hour rendezvous at a motel. It was all there, in casual, sickening detail. I felt the blood drain from my face. A wave of nausea rolled through my gut, and I had to set the iPad down before I dropped it. Hank whined softly at my feet, sensing something was wrong. My world was tilting on its axis. Mara, my wife, who kissed me goodbye each morning and laughed with me over takeout and movies, was having an affair. The evidence glared up from the device on the coffee table. Undeniable. My hands were trembling. I pressed them flat against my thighs, trying to steady myself. A flurry of questions swarmed in my mind. Who the hell was Colin? A coworker, obviously. How long had this been going on? Did she love him? Had I been a fool this whole time? Anger and heartbreak surged inside me, battling for control. How could she do this? I had been faithful, devoted. Sure, I worked long hours sometimes, and maybe I wasn't as romantic as I could be, but I never imagined she would betray me like this. Jaw clenched, I snatched up the iPad again and forced myself to read more, to gather every scrap of information I could. Each message, each pet name and dirty remark felt like a knife twisting in my gut. In some messages, she complained about me, petty, hurtful little jabs about my habits or how I never listen, things she'd never voiced to me. There were even a few photos. Her in a lacy red lingerie set I'd never seen, mirror selfied with a coy smile, captioned, "For later." My vision blurred with tears of rage and hurt. At that moment, I wanted nothing more than to smash his face in. My fingers hovered over the iPad's screen, white-knuckled. Another new message appeared. "Miss you already. Next time I'll book us the whole afternoon." The audacity, the confidence of this man texting my wife such things. It made my blood boil. I realized her iPad might mark the messages as read. I quickly toggled it offline, praying he wouldn't see that I'd read everything. The last thing I needed was Colin tipping off Mara. With the device offline and the incriminating conversation saved in my hands, a cold clarity emerged through the haze of emotion. If I confronted her right now, I'd get screaming and crying, maybe half-truths. She might try to delete evidence, twist the story. I couldn't afford that. Not if I wanted real justice. I took a shaky breath. I needed a plan. Adrenaline still surging, I got up and paced the living room. Part of me wanted to jump in my car, race to that motel, and catch them in the act. For a moment, I imagined doing just that, driving down there and kicking in a motel room door. The thought of it made my heart pound. But if I barged in now, I'd get a moment of visceral satisfaction and a whole lot of chaos. A screaming match in a hallway, maybe a fistfight that could land me in jail. And then what? She'd deny or minimize, maybe destroy evidence. No. I realized I needed to hold back and be smart. I had something most betrayed spouses never get: foreknowledge. They didn't know I knew. I could use that to my advantage. I forced myself to breathe slowly, wiping the moisture from my eyes. Hank pressed against my leg, warm and worried. I rested a hand on his head. "It's okay, boy," I murmured. Though nothing was okay. I needed to keep busy or I'd lose my mind. So I cleaned, scrubbing countertops that were already spotless, anything to channel the adrenaline. While I wiped the same spot for the 10th time, my mind began to race ahead. I needed a plan, and the first step of any plan is information. Finally, around 10 p.m., I heard Mara's keys in the front door. My heart lurched painfully. I hurriedly put the iPad back exactly where it had been and sank into the couch, trying to appear half asleep in front of the TV. The door opened and Mara stepped in, bringing a gust of damp air with her. She looked a little flushed, hair slightly mussed. Hank trotted over, tail wagging, and she gave him a distracted pat. "Hey, hun," she said softly when she saw me. "You didn't have to wait up." I muted the TV and gave her what I hoped was a drowsy smile. I wasn't really, just watching some nonsense. How was book club? She shed her coat and kicked off her heels. It was good. We mostly gossiped and lost track of time. "Sorry I'm back so late." She came over and leaned down to kiss me. I felt her warm lips on mine and had to fight the urge to recoil. Could I smell a faint trace of cologne on her that wasn't mine, or was my mind playing tricks? I forced myself to stay still, to even smile as she pulled back. "No worries," I said, praying my voice sounded normal. "Glad you had fun. I just had the curry and chilled out." She smiled, seemingly relieved that I was so nonchalant. "Thanks for being so understanding." With that, she headed toward the bathroom, humming softly to herself as she went. I watched her disappear down the hall. She was acting like everything was perfectly normal, like she hadn't just spent the evening with another man. The sheer ease with which she lied to me, crawled into my bed after being with him, made my stomach churn. That night, I lay awake in the darkness, listening to her breathing slow into sleep beside me. I kept my back to her, eyes open, staring at nothing. Staring. The woman I loved, the woman I thought I knew inside and out, was living a lie right under my nose. Anger, pain, and a grim resolve coiled within me. I wasn't going to confront her tonight. I wasn't going to confront her tomorrow either. Not until I had everything ready. When I finally confronted Mara and her lover, I intended to leave nothing but scorched earth. My alarm went off at 6:30 a.m., but I was already awake. I had barely slept. Mara was still out cold, curled on her side, looking for all the world like the innocent woman I'd believed her to be. The urge to shake her awake and demand answers was strong, but I swallowed it down. Not yet. I slipped out of bed and quietly took her iPad and our laptop to the living room. With a steaming mug of coffee at my side and Hank at my feet, I sat at the dining table and got to work, adrenaline and betrayal fueling me. Preserve everything. I wasn't sure what would be useful, but I knew I needed proof. Proof that she couldn't deny or spin. First, I plugged a thumb drive into my laptop. Using her iPad, careful to keep it offline, I took screenshots of the entire text conversation with Colin, from flirtatious beginning to explicit end. Every "miss you," every illicit detail of their meetups, every damning pet name, they all went onto that drive. My hands shook as I saved each image file, but I kept going. Next, I opened her email. She was logged into her personal Gmail on the iPad. The app opened right up. I rifled through her inbox for anything suspicious. One email from Colin about a work project looked mundane, but then I noticed a folder she'd created, innocuously labeled recipes. Inside was a trove of exchanged messages that made my blood boil. They went back nearly a year. It started as friendly work banter, then gradually shifted to personal confessions, and finally to full-blown affair logistics. Reading their lovey-dovey and lusty emails, I felt alternately nauseated and enraged. One gutting email chain from 6 months ago had Mara pouring her heart out. I hate lying to him. I feel so guilty. But when I'm with you, I don't even care. Colin's response, just a bit longer, baby. We'll find a way to be together. It hit me that they might have even fantasized about a future together. Were they waiting for the right time to throw me aside? My jaw tightened so hard it hurt. I saved all those emails too, copying them as PDFs to the thumb drive. As I combed through the evidence, patterns emerged. Their affair had blossomed while I was busy at work and thought she was working late or on business trips. So many lies. The next find was a literal hidden gem. I searched our home office and bedroom for anything out of place. In the back of Mara's closet, inside an old shoebox, I found a cheap flip phone, powered off, a burner phone. My heart pounded as I turned it on, using a tissue, as if preserving fingerprints mattered. No passcode. There were only a few texts on it, but all from one number, clearly Colin's. There were also call logs, repeated late-night and midday calls to the same number. She must have used this phone to communicate with him in total secrecy. I snapped photos of the screen with my own phone for documentation. Holding that burner phone in my hand was surreal. It was tangible proof of the depth of her deceit. I carefully powered it down and put it back in its hiding place. No need to tip her off by disposing of it. I wasn't done. I needed to know if she'd spent any of our money on this creep. Checking our joint bank and credit card statements, I found what I expected. A couple of fishy charges over the last months. One was a $129 charge at Emerald Suites, the motel by her office, which she had recorded in our budgeting spreadsheet as hardware store, house repair. Another was at a Sunrise Inn out of town labeled as vet clinic, Hank. The gall of using our dog as a cover story made me shake my head in disbelief. She'd put serious effort into covering her tracks. By 8 a.m., I had compiled a thorough dossier. Screenshots, saved emails, photos of the burner phone messages, bank statements, highlighting her motel trysts, everything. My hands hovered over the stack of evidence in that thumb drive. It felt utterly surreal to be gathering proof of my own wife's affair, like I was the detective in my marriage. Mara eventually woke and went through her usual morning routine, oblivious to the hurricane swirling in my head. I played my part as best I could. Over breakfast, I made casual conversation about our day. She mentioned an afternoon client meeting and a possible team happy hour after work. I nodded along, acting interested. Inside, I noted how smoothly she lied. Happy hour, right? Likely a rendezvous with him. Before she left, I gave her a quick kiss on the cheek. Have a good day, I said, voice steady. You too, hun. Love you, she replied as she headed out the door with a bright smile. I watched her drive away, and my own smile collapsed the second she was out of sight. The moment she was gone, I let out a long, shuddering breath. My mask of normalcy fell off. Hank nudged my leg, picking up on my tension. Guess it's time to get to work. Boy, I whispered. I decided to take the day off. I messaged my team that I was ill. In truth, I was sick. Sick with betrayal and with the determination to set things right. With the house empty, I spread out my collected evidence on the dining table like I was preparing for a court case. In a sense, I was. Step 1 of my plan, secure a lawyer and understand exactly how to maximize my advantage. I reached out to a trusted friend for a referral to a top-notch divorce attorney, insisting on discretion. Within a day, I had a meeting set with an experienced family lawyer named Evelyn Marsh. My plan took shape in broad strokes: secure a divorce attorney, quietly protect my assets, gather more proof if needed, perhaps via a private investigator, keep acting normal to avoid alerting Mara, and then, when everything was ready, confront and expose them in the most devastating way possible. Before the day was over, I also quietly moved half of the balance from our joint savings into an account in my name alone. It was money I'd brought into the marriage, and per our prenup, oh yes, thank God for that prenup, I was entitled to keep my premarital assets separate. I wasn't about to let her potentially siphon our accounts if she got wind of what was coming. I left her half of the joint funds untouched for now. No alarms to trigger her suspicion. That evening, I greeted Mara with a smile and a kiss as she returned from her so-called happy hour. She was a bit tipsy and talkative, whether from actual drinks or the high of seeing him I didn't know. I played the attentive husband, listening to her gossip about work, even as it made my skin crawl to imagine what she'd really been up to an hour before. Each lie that dripped from her lips only steeled my resolve. Inside, I repeated my new mantra: patience. Not yet. Soon. 2 days later, I sat in the sleek downtown office of Evelyn Marsh, divorce attorney. The floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked Elliott Bay. I barely noticed the view. I was focused on the folder of evidence in Evelyn's hands. I had given her everything: printed screenshots of texts, copies of emails, the works. Evelyn flipped through the pages, her expression professionally neutral. At last, she set them down and folded her hands. "Well," she said calmly, "you certainly came prepared." "I try," I replied with a thin, humorless smile. In truth, I felt like a raw nerve, but presenting as controlled and methodical was important. To myself, as much as to her. "First, I'm sorry you're going through this," Evelyn said, her tone softening just a touch. "Infidelity is awful to discover. The good news is that legally, you're in a strong position." I nodded, anxious to hear more. "Because of the prenup," I prompted. "Years ago, when Mara and I got engaged, I insisted on a prenuptial agreement. At the time, it caused some friction. She thought I was being pessimistic, but eventually, she signed. Now that decision was about to pay off." "Exactly," Evelyn said. "I've reviewed your prenup. There's a clear infidelity clause. If a spouse cheats, it voids any claim they have to certain assets and to alimony. Washington is generally a no-fault divorce state, but a prenup like this is enforceable as a contract between you two. In short, if we establish her infidelity, she won't be entitled to any spousal support and will walk away with only the assets in her name and whatever division of joint property the agreement stipulates, which is minimal." Hearing it put so bluntly gave me a grim satisfaction. Financially, I could make sure she didn't get a dime more than the bare minimum. "Good," I said quietly. Evelyn offered a small, sympathetic smile. "Now, the evidence you have is more than sufficient to prove the affair. Texts, emails, even those hotel receipts. Frankly, if I were representing your wife, I'd advise her to settle immediately and not fight this." I was silent for a moment, absorbing that. Mara might very well try to avoid a brutal court battle once she saw what I had. Part of me hoped she would, but part of me wanted the fight, to drag her through the mud as painfully as possible. I pushed that latter part down for now and focused on practicalities. "What about other consequences?" I asked. "Colin, for instance. I know I can't exactly sue him or anything. Alienation of affection lawsuits aren't a thing in our state." Evelyn pursed her lips. "Legally, you can't target him through this divorce. Our focus is ending the marriage on terms favorable to you. However," she added, "if he's a co-worker of hers, especially a superior, that could violate company policy. While that's not your legal battle, I've seen cases where an angry spouse sends evidence to the cheater's employer. It can wreak havoc on the lover's career, and sometimes on the cheating spouse's job, too." I nodded. "I've considered that. In fact, the thought of sending their dirty emails directly to her HR department had crossed my mind at 3 a.m. last night." Evelyn leaned forward slightly. "Nathan, I understand you want consequences for them both. That's natural. And outside of this office, what you do is up to you. My advice is just avoid anything illegal. Stick to the truth and time any exposure with serving the papers so she won't have time to react or hide assets." Her frank acknowledgement of my desire for revenge was oddly comforting. "Understood," I said. "Good. Now, timeline. Are you looking to serve her immediately, or do you have a particular moment in mind?" I paused, considering. "I have something in mind. Very soon, though. Likely within the next couple of weeks. I want to line things up first." Evelyn nodded. "We can prepare the filing and have it ready. Just give me the word, and I'll have her served. Given the prenup and evidence, this should be relatively quick. One more thing. Be prepared for the emotional fallout. Cheaters can sometimes lash out or play victim when confronted, even if legally cornered. Stay calm and let me handle any legal wrangling." I smirked without humor. "Don't worry. By the time I'm done, she'll have no fight left in her." As I left Evelyn's office, I felt more empowered than I had in days. Legally, financially, I was positioning myself to walk away intact while she'd be left in ruins. But the legal war was only one part of this. There was still the personal war to be waged. I spent the next few days executing the remaining pieces of my plan. I hired a private investigator to gather any photographic evidence of Mara and Colin together, just to have an undeniable ace up my sleeve. I also quietly delivered an anonymous package to Mara's HR department containing a few choice excerpts of her and Colin's email exchange, the ones sent from her work account, and a polite note alerting them to a possible inappropriate relationship between a manager and subordinate. I knew that would light a fire under Colin's career, if nothing else. Each night I came home and acted the devoted, oblivious husband. Each night, after she slept, I updated a sort of war journal on my laptop, documenting events, noting ideas for the final confrontation. There was a dark part of me almost looking forward to it, and then the time for the next phase arrived. The following Monday night, I set phase 2 into motion. Feigned reconciliation. It was time to make Mara think she had a second chance, right before I pulled the rug out from under her. After an anxious day, I found my moment after dinner. We were on the couch, Netflix asking if we were still watching some show neither of us actually saw. My heart thudded as I muted the TV. Mara, we need to talk, I said quietly, staring at the blank screen. She sensed the gravity in my tone immediately. What is it? She asked, concern in her eyes. I turned to face her, letting my eyes brim with real unshed tears. I know, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. About you and Colin. Her reaction was immediate and telling. She blanched, mouth falling open. What? What about Colin? The attempted innocence faltered even as she spoke it. My lower lip trembled. I had no trouble mustering genuine emotion for this part. I saw messages, Mara, on your iPad. I let that sink in, watching the blood drain from her face. Last week. I know you've been having an affair. My voice broke on the last words. Mara's eyes filled with tears almost instantly. Oh my God, she choked out. Nathan, Her face crumpled and she covered it with her hands. I'm so sorry, she sobbed. There it was. Confession. I felt a bitter taste in my mouth, a mix of triumph and heartbreak. I sniffed hard, drawing a shuddering breath. How long? I managed to ask, the pain in my voice not entirely feigned. She wiped her eyes, shaking her head. Since last year, she stammered. It started when we went to that conference. I never meant for it to happen. I never wanted to hurt you. She reached for my hand and I let her take it, though I was stiff. I've been so unhappy and he was just there for me. But it meant nothing compared to us, I swear. It was a mistake, a horrible mistake. Her words came out in a desperate tumble. Tears streamed down her cheeks. If I hadn't seen the texts and emails, I might have felt purely sorry for her. Even now, a part of me ached seeing her in such anguish. But I reminded myself that she was reaping what she sowed. You slept with him, I said, as if I needed confirmation, as if the word affair wasn't enough. I wanted to hear her say it. She nodded miserably. Yes. But it didn't mean anything, it was just physical. She stopped herself, realizing how flimsy that sounded. I mean, I thought I had feelings, but I was confused, lonely. You were always working, and I felt invisible and… She broke off, sobbing. I'm not trying to excuse it. I was selfish and wrong, and I betrayed you. I have no excuse. I let silence hang thick between us for a long moment, only her sobs and ragged breaths filling it. Finally I spoke, voice trembling. I loved you, Mara. I would have done anything for you. Did our life, our marriage, really mean so little to you? She looked up, panicked. No, it meant everything to me. You mean everything to me. I was stupid and insecure and I messed up, Nathan. I was looking for something that was missing in myself, not because of you. Please, please. She scooted closer, gripping my hands in both of hers desperately. If you can ever forgive me, I promise I will spend the rest of my life making it up to you. I'll do anything. I'll go to therapy. I'll let you track my phone and email. I'll quit my job if I have to. Just please, don't leave me. Her pleas poured out, raw and pleading. This was the moment of truth for me as well. I could choose righteous anger and kick her out now, but that wasn't in the script I'd written. I had to sell the reconciliation. I turned away, as if grappling with myself. In reality, I was calming the rage that still simmered beneath my surface. I made myself think of the good times, of the woman I married, and allowed a pained expression to cross my face. I can't just stop loving you overnight, I murmured, which was true enough. Despite everything, a part of me still loved who I thought she was. This hurts so much, Mara. I don't know how to get past it. She squeezed my hands, hanging on every word. One day at a time. However long it takes, I'll wait. I'll do whatever it takes. I fell silent, appearing deep in tortured thought. Finally, I nodded slowly. All right. I'm not promising anything, but I'm willing to try to work through this. I don't want to throw 7 years away without trying. The relief that broke over her face was heartbreaking in its own way. She let out a sob and threw her arms around me. Thank you, she cried into my shoulder. Thank you, Nathan. I don't deserve it, but thank you. I stayed stiff in her embrace for a moment, then slowly lifted my arms and held her, my eyes focused on the far wall as she trembled against me. There was no joy for me in this hug, only grim resolve. Phase 2 was underway. Mara pulled back after a moment, wiping her tears. I'll end it right now, she said, suddenly decisive. She picked up her phone from the coffee table. Her hands shook as she unlocked it. I'll call him and end it. I want you to hear. I hadn't expected she'd do it this instant, but I certainly welcomed the gesture. Okay, I said quietly. With me watching, she found Colin's number and pressed the call button. She even put it on speaker, maybe to prove she wasn't hiding anything. My heart thudded. This was an unexpected bonus. It rang twice. Then his voice came through the speaker, a casual, oblivious, "Hey, you, didn't expect you to call. Miss me already?" He sounded smug and playful. Mara winced, tears spilling anew. I could imagine how hearing his pet name in front of me must make her feel. Voice shaking, she managed to speak. Colin, I'm calling to say it's over. I can't do this anymore. A brief silence. Then Colin's voice hardened with confusion. What? Mara, what are you talking about? Is he there? Are you with him? Mara looked at me, eyes filled with shame and panic. Yes, he's here. I told him everything, she said into the phone. And I'm telling you, it's over. I love my husband, and I'm going to fix my marriage. Don't contact me again. Are you serious? Colin's voice burst out, incredulous and angry. After everything, you're just... Mara jabbed the end call button, cutting him off. The call ended with a tiny beep. She dropped the phone onto the couch and collapsed against me, sobbing. It's done, she whispered. It's done. I'll never speak to him again, I swear. I wrapped an arm around her, gently stroking her hair as she cried into my chest. Inside, I felt an icy satisfaction. I almost wanted to smile. She had just burned her bridge with him in the most final way, and he was clearly furious. Let him be. He was next on my list. As I held my weeping wife, I realized how surreal this moment was, comforting her for cheating on me, while secretly plotting her destruction. It felt almost like an out-of-body experience. But I kept my voice gentle. We'll try to get through this, I murmured, as if reassuring myself as much as her. I just need time. I'll give you all the time you need, she said quickly, pulling back to look at me. Her eyes were red, face blotchy. Maybe I should sleep in the guest room, whatever makes you comfortable. I shook my head slowly. Stay. I want to hold you tonight. I swallowed. It hurts, but I've missed holding you. Oh, Nathan, she whimpered, hugging me tightly again. I'm so sorry. I love you so much. I rested my chin atop her head, closing my eyes. I love you too, I whispered. And maybe, in that moment, it was true in a twisted way. I loved her enough to have been shattered by her, and enough to do what I was going to do next. Over the next few days, Mara was on her absolute best behavior. She hovered around me like an anxious, repentant angel, constantly asking how I was feeling, if I needed anything. She cooked my favorite meals, spontaneously hugged me, then immediately apologized if I tensed up. She even voluntarily handed me all her electronic devices and passwords, saying, "I have nothing to hide. I want you to feel secure." I acted reluctant but accepted the gesture, skimming through her messages in front of her. Of course, she'd already scrubbed incriminating stuff by now. The transparency was mostly symbolic, but it played into my hands. I suggested we schedule marriage counseling for a few weeks out to help work through this. She readily agreed, saying she'd do whatever it took. I also gently recommended that perhaps we keep this between us for now. No need to tell friends or family until we see if we can work it out. She happily concurred, likely relieved not to face the shame. Little did she know, I was saving the big reveal for later. One potential wrinkle was an upcoming 2-night business trip she was supposed to take to San Francisco for a marketing expo, one that Colin and a couple of others from her team would attend as well. When she brought it up on Tuesday, she immediately offered to cancel. "I don't have to go," she insisted, eyes earnest. "I can tell my boss I'm sick or something. I don't want you worrying." I pretended to deliberate. "It's a work trip, right? I don't want to hurt your job. Are you sure you'll be okay? Around him?" "I won't be alone with him for a second," she promised. "There are other colleagues going. I'll room with Claire, you remember her? And I'll call you every night. Honestly, if you want me to cancel, I will." I shook my head, doing my best to appear the picture of hesitant trust. "No, you should go. I won't sabotage your career. Let's treat it as a test, I guess. I'll trust you to keep it professional." She threw her arms around me. "Thank you. I won't let you down. I'll prove you can trust me." I patted her back. "Just be careful. And call me, like you said." The irony was thick. She was asking me to trust her while I was in the middle of the most elaborate deception of my life. But outwardly, I smiled faintly and nodded. When Wednesday came, I dropped her at the airport. She kissed me goodbye like a loving wife, and I told her to have a safe flight. As soon as she was out of sight, my face fell back into its true state: cold determination. That night, I got an update from the private investigator who had shadowed her to San Francisco. On the first day of the expo, nothing intimate happened. Mara and Colin kept a cordial, professional distance in public, never alone together, thanks to other colleagues milling about. The PI reported they were never observed one-on-one. I actually felt a small flicker of admiration. Maybe she really was trying to keep her word. But the following night, temptation, or perhaps Colin's persistence, won out. The PI sent a series of photos to my secure email. The first showed Mara and Colin sitting close together at a dim corner table in a restaurant, no other co-workers in sight. The second, taken later, captured them at her hotel side entrance, locked in a kiss. It was grainy and shadowy, but their faces were clear enough. A final note from the PI confirmed Colin went up to her room and emerged about an hour later. I stared at those photos for a long time, feeling oddly calm. There it was, proof that even after begging for forgiveness, even after all her promises, she couldn't help herself. Or maybe he pressured her, who knows? It didn't matter. Line crossed. Again. When I picked her up from the airport Friday evening, I played the role of curious, slightly anxious husband. I asked how the expo went, if she had much downtime. She mentioned a team dinner, which must have been that private meal with Colin, and quickly added that she spent most of the time with Claire and others. I simply nodded, keeping my expression neutral. That night, Mara curled up to me in bed and said softly, "Thank you for trusting me to go." I know it probably wasn't easy. Her eyes searched mine in the dark. Did guilt flicker there? Hard to say. I just stroked her hair and gave a non-committal, "Mm-hmm." Inside, I knew everything I needed to know. The time was nearly upon us. Saturday morning, I told Mara I wanted to invite her parents for dinner that evening. "I think we should be honest with them that we went through a rough patch, but we're working on it," I said. In truth, I had a very different conversation planned, but she didn't need to know that. She looked a little nervous. Nobody likes telling their parents they messed up, but then she smiled and agreed it might be good to have their support. "I'll let Mom and Dad know to come by around 6, she said. The poor thing probably thought this was part of our healing process. Little did she know, I was about to shatter her world in front of an audience. On Saturday afternoon, while Mara tidied up and put a roast in the oven for dinner, I was in our home office making final preparations. I retrieved the neatly organized envelope from my locked desk drawer. Inside were printed copies of select text messages. The least graphic ones, but damning enough, and a few photographs, particularly the one of her and Colin kissing by the hotel. I also had a copy of our prenup and the drafted divorce papers, complete with the infidelity clause highlighted. I tucked 2 USB flash drives in the envelope as well, each containing the full trove of evidence for reference. One drive was for her parents, if they wanted it later. Total overkill? Maybe. But I wanted absolute clarity. No spin. No he said, she said. Just the truth. By 6 p.m., the stage was set. I felt oddly calm, like a performer who'd rehearsed this scene so many times in his head that now it was almost mechanical. Jim and Linda, my in-laws, arrived cheerful and unsuspecting. I greeted them warmly with hugs and my best attempt at a genuine smile. We all sat down to the dinner Mara had prepared. Conversation was light at first. Small talk about work. I bit my tongue. A bit about a cousin's upcoming wedding. Nothing of substance. Mara was quieter than usual, but she tried to smile along. I could tell she was a bundle of nerves under the surface, worried I might bring up something. But since I was carrying the conversation normally, she likely assumed I'd stick to the rough patch script. Dinner stretched on, and I waited patiently until plates were cleared and we were having coffee and pie. No sense ruining a good meal, after all. At last, I folded my hands on the table and cleared my throat. My heart started to pound, but I forced my voice to stay even. Jim, Linda, I began, looking across at them. We really appreciate you coming by. There's something we need to talk to you about. Mara had been mid-sip of her coffee. She set it down, staring at me with a sudden apprehension. This wasn't the gentle, we had issues, but we're okay now chat she expected. That much was clear from my tone. Her mom spoke first, concern etched on her face. Sweetheart, you're scaring me. What's going on? I glanced at Mara, then back to her parents. Our marriage has been in trouble, I said bluntly. My grip tightened on the envelope in my lap under the table. And it's not because of the usual stuff. It's because Mara has been unfaithful to me. A shocked silence fell. Mara made a strangled sound in her throat and stared at the table, her eyes already welling up. Her mother's hand flew to her mouth. Her father, Jim, frowned deeply, looking from me to his daughter. Mara, what is he saying? He asked, voice controlled but strained. Tears spilled down Mara's cheeks. Dad, Mom, I made a terrible mistake, she whispered. I didn't intend to let her control the narrative. Gently, I pulled the envelope into view and slid a few of the photos out onto the table. One was the print of the hotel kiss. Another was a screenshot of a text exchange where Colin said he loved her. Both her parents peered at the items with dawning horror. I discovered a lot, I said, my voice colder now. This has been going on for almost a year, with a man from her work. I pointed lightly to the printouts. These are just examples. There's plenty more. Linda's eyes flicked over the evidence, then to Mara. She looked utterly heartbroken. Oh, Mara, how could you? She said in a hushed, hurt tone. Jim's face had turned red. Is this true? He asked his daughter, anger and disappointment vying in his voice. Mara broke down, covering her face. It's true, she sobbed. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Her mother closed her eyes, pained. Her father shook his head slowly, trying to master himself. I decided to press on. Reaching back into the envelope, I pulled out the divorce papers and placed them on the table, face up so that dissolution of marriage and the bold infidelity clause invoked, which Evelyn had marked prominently, could be seen. I have already filed for divorce, I stated. Given the circumstances and our prenup, it will be straightforward. I can't stay married to someone who's betrayed me like this. Linda let out a small gasp, fresh tears in her eyes as she regarded the legal documents. Jim rubbed a hand over his face, looking decades older than a minute ago. Mara was nearly hysterical now. Please, Nathan. She looked at me imploringly, as if I hadn't just performed an exorcism of our marriage in front of her parents. Don't do this here. How else? I snapped, unable to keep a harder edge out of my voice. When would have been a good time, Mara? You had countless chances to come clean, to end it, and you didn't. Even after I found out and forgave you, I lied pointedly for her parents' benefit, you still went back to him. I slid the photo of the restaurant meetup toward her. She glanced down and winced at the sight of her and Colin captured on film. Jim's eyes widened. You forgave her? And she continued. Good Lord. He turned to Mara, voice low and vibrating with anger. "I raised you better than this, young lady. How could you do this to your husband? To your family?" Mara just cried harder, unable to muster any defense. Her mother placed a comforting, if shaky hand on her shoulder, but I could tell even Linda was shell-shocked and unsure what to do. I realized I was trembling. Part of it was real emotion. This was gut-wrenching and awful. But another part was a kind of exhilaration. The truth was out. The weight was finally off my chest and squarely onto hers. I almost felt bad seeing her so broken. Almost. I cleared my throat, trying to remain composed. "I'm sorry to spring this on you both," I said to the in-laws, adopting a more measured tone. "I thought you should know what's really been going on. I have all the evidence here." I tapped the envelope. "It's pretty clear-cut. She violated my trust and our marriage vows. I have to end it." Linda was openly weeping now, quietly, as she rubbed Mara's back. Jim looked at me, and despite his anger at his daughter, his eyes held sympathy for me. "Nathan, I don't know what to say. I'm so sorry." He took a breath, steadying himself. "I understand why you feel you must do this." Mara suddenly pushed back her chair and stumbled to her feet. Mascara streaked her cheeks. She looked around at all of us, an almost animal panic in her expression. "Please, please, I'll do anything." She reached toward me, then toward her parents. "Mom, Dad, I know I've disappointed you. I messed up so bad." "Oh, honey," Linda murmured, torn between anger and maternal instinct. Mara turned to me again, clasping her hands as if praying. "Nathan, please, don't do this. We can still... I can fix this, I swear to God. I'll spend my life making it up to you." She was babbling, desperate, fully in breakdown mode. I stood up slowly, looking at the shattered woman in front of me. My heart panged painfully in my chest, but I steeled myself. "It's too late," I said, each word heavy. "It's done, Mara. I've given you every chance. There's no coming back from this." At that, something in her seemed to collapse. Her shoulders sagged, and a wail escaped her lips. Linda stood and caught her daughter as she crumpled, guiding her gently down to the floor as Mara sobbed uncontrollably. Jim rose as well, visibly shaken. He looked at me, then down at his wife and daughter on the floor. He put a hand on my shoulder. We're going to take her home with us tonight," he said quietly. "She shouldn't be here right now." I nodded, wordless. Emotion clogged my throat. The sight of Mara, curled on the rug, crying as her mother rocked her, was something I wouldn't forget. Ever. It was the image of a life utterly ruined by her own actions, and by my response to them. Within the next 15 minutes, Jim and Linda gathered Mara up. She was nearly catatonic now, silent and staring. I handed Jim the envelope of evidence almost as an afterthought. "This is for you," I said under my breath. He accepted it with a grim expression. Mara wouldn't even look at me as her parents guided her out to their car. I didn't say goodbye, and neither did she. In a matter of days, she'd gone from my wife to a ghost in my life. As their car pulled away, I stood on the porch in the cool night air, feeling empty. Not triumphant, not vindicated, just empty. "It's done," I whispered to myself, maybe to convince myself that this was reality now. I went inside to the eerily silent house, my house now. Hank came out from where he'd been hiding in our bedroom. He never did like raised voices, and approached me cautiously. I knelt down and scratched his ears, reassuring him softly. He had no idea what had just happened, only that the pack he loved was broken. I sank onto the couch, the same spot where just days ago I'd held Mara, and promised to try to work things out. A bitter, half-laugh escaped me. It was incredible, really, how quickly and thoroughly life can change. But I wasn't quite done. There was one more loose end to tie up. Colin, and his reckoning was already in motion. First thing Monday morning, I heard from a mutual contact that Colin was noticeably absent from work. In fact, rumor was he'd been fired. Married higher-ups tend not to look kindly on managers carrying on tawdry affairs with co-workers, especially when HR is handed a stack of evidence on a silver platter. Imagine that. Mara, I learned, had preemptively resigned. Good. Let them both lose what they'd built. A few days later, I got an angry email from none other than Colin himself. Apparently, he still had my address from some old company function. It was a ranting, scathing paragraph blaming me for ruining his career and Mara's life, calling me every name in the book: psychopath, manipulator, bitter loser. I read it with a smirk and deleted it. He wasn't worth a response. If he hadn't grasped that his own choices had consequences, that was on him. The weeks that followed were a blur of adjustments and consequences settling into place. The divorce process was swift and clinical. Mara did not contest a thing. How could she? Within a month, our marriage was dissolved on paper. Thanks to the prenup and evidence of her adultery, she walked away with little beyond her personal belongings. I kept the house, my business, the car, everything of value. She, as I understood, moved in with her parents temporarily. Socially, the story spread without any effort on my part. I didn't splash it on Facebook or send out a mass email, but I was honest with close friends about why we split. Word travels. Some were shocked. Some had apparently suspected something was off. Mara's best friend stopped speaking to her. A couple of our mutual friends tried to stay neutral but clearly distanced themselves from her. In our community, Mara became that woman, the one who cheated on the nicest guy. I suspect the social fallout hurt her almost as much as the financial one. Professionally, her lover's fate was sealed. Colin indeed lost his job, and he found it difficult to climb the corporate ladder after that. His personal reputation was tarnished. Mara's own career in that firm was over as well. She was talented at her job, but she quit out of shame and never returned. And me? I was, well, not okay, but surviving. I even went to therapy to help process the trauma. The counselor said my response, my cold, methodical pursuit of revenge, was a survival mechanism, a way to regain control in an emotionally devastating situation. Maybe she was right. All I know is that I did what I felt I had to do, and I wasn't haunted by what-ifs. In quieter moments, I'd sit in my living room with Hank at my feet and try to make sense of everything that happened. The man who loved his wife so deeply had been replaced by one who systematically destroyed her. Did that make me a terrible person? Sometimes I wondered. But then I'd remind myself of her sobbing admission, "I never meant to hurt you." In the end, she hurt me more deeply than I thought possible, and I returned the favor in full. One chilly winter evening, I stood alone on Alki Beach, watching the sunset paint the sky in fiery hues. The salty breeze on my face was bracing. I realized I felt lighter. Not happy exactly, not yet, but unburdened. I had confronted the betrayal head-on and seen it through to its conclusion. Revenge is a cold, solitary affair. When the dust settles, you're left alone with your thoughts, wondering who you've become. I had been broken, yes, but not destroyed. I took a deep breath of the sea air and let it out slowly, feeling a weight lift. I turned away from the orange glow on the horizon and headed back to my car. It was time to go home and start figuring out what my new life would be. I knew it wouldn't be easy, and I knew the scars would remain, but I also knew this. I reclaimed my self-respect, and I made those who betrayed me pay dearly for their choices. Now, I could finally begin to heal.